It started like any other evening. The kind parents forget the moment it ends. No alarms. No warnings. No reason to check the clock. Just another quiet residential complex settling into the end of the day. The air was warm. The light was fading. And somewhere nearby, children were still playing, the way children always do when they feel safe. Behind closed doors, dinners were being prepared. Televisions murmured in the background. Phones buzzed with messages that could wait. No one was watching closely, because nothing had ever happened here before. The courtyard was empty now, but only minutes earlier, it had been full. Full of footsteps, laughter, small voices calling out to one another. Moments like these disappear without ceremony. They don't announce themselves. They don't leave warnings. Samantha Runnion was last seen on July 15, 2002, in Stanton, California. At the time, no one knew this ordinary evening would be the last time she would ever be seen alive. Nothing felt urgent. Nothing felt wrong. And that is how it always begins. Samantha Runnion was known as someone who trusted easily. The kind of child who spoke to everyone, who smiled first, who assumed the world was gentle because it had always been gentle to her. She loved superheroes, princess costumes, bright colors, things that made ordinary days feel magical. Her favorite movie was Hercules. She watched it so often that she could repeat entire scenes from memory. The poster hung above her bed, taped slightly crooked, like she had tried to put it up herself. Her mother, Erin, worked long hours. When she came home in the evenings, tired from the day, Samantha had a routine. She would hide. Behind doors. Behind furniture. Anywhere she thought might surprise her. And when Erin walked in, Samantha would jump out laughing, as if nothing in the world was more important than being seen. She had just finished first grade. Her backpack still sat by the door, filled with half-finished drawings and loose pencils. Her birthday was coming up. Presents had already been chosen. Small ones. Simple ones. The kinds of gifts children remember forever. That evening she wasn't alone. Her grandmother was nearby. Her best friend was with her. The courtyard was full of familiar faces. There were no secrets. No conflicts. No tension. Just another child in another safe place, doing what children have done in quiet neighborhoods for generations. Everything felt normal. Everything felt protected. Because up until that moment, it always had been. On the surface, nothing was wrong. No crime reports. No missing persons. No police sirens cutting through the afternoon. Stanton was small. Not just in size. In feeling. The kind of place where garage doors stayed open. Not because people were careless, but because they didn't feel the need to close them. Neighbors knew each other's schedules. They waved from across driveways. They borrowed sugar, returned tools, kept an eye on each other's kids without being asked. Strangers were rare. New faces were noticed. And unfamiliar cars stood out, not as threats, just as something to be curious about. Children moved freely. From one building to the next. From one game to another. From one afternoon into the next, without anyone keeping track of time. Parents didn't hover. They didn't count steps. They didn't feel the need to look over their shoulders. If anything felt off, it was easy to explain it away. The noise was just traffic. A shadow was just a passing car. A moment of unease was just imagination. Because in places like this, nothing bad was supposed to happen. In the weeks leading up to that evening, no one noticed anything unusual. No unfamiliar faces. No strange encounters. No reason to feel uneasy. No one felt watched. No one felt followed. No one thought twice about the routines they had repeated hundreds of times before. Life moved the way it always had. Predictable. Comfortable. Unremarkable. Then the car drove past. Not fast. Not slowly. Just enough to be noticed. A pale green shape moving through the complex, blending into the background of parked vehicles and passing traffic. It circled once. Then again. At first, it didn't stand out. Cars came and went all the time. People got lost. Visitors made wrong turns. Then the driver stopped. He didn't rush. He didn't shout. He didn't draw attention to himself. He asked a simple question. About a puppy. A missing chihuahua. The kind of thing anyone might ask. The kind of thing children were taught to help with. At first, it sounded harmless. Almost friendly. It always does. The moment did not feel dramatic. There was no build-up. No sense that something was about to change. Just a normal question. On a normal street. In a place where nothing bad was supposed to happen. The last words Samantha said were not to her mother. Not to her grandmother. They were to her best friend. Go get my grandma. She didn't scream at first. She didn't understand what was happening. Only that something had suddenly gone wrong. It happened in seconds. So fast that the mind struggles to hold on to it. So fast that even witnesses would later question what they had seen. A child's voice. A door opening. A car pulling away. And then silence. Not the kind that follows noise. But the kind that replaces it. After that, there was nothing. No footsteps. No laughter. No small voice calling out from the courtyard. Just an empty space where a child had been standing moments earlier. And a community that would spend the rest of its life trying to understand how quickly a safe place can disappear. At first, the investigation moved in only one direction. Outward. Into the streets. Into the community. Into every possible place she could have been taken. But the search no longer felt like a rescue. It has become something else now. Not a race to find someone alive. A reconstruction of how everything had already happened. The most important account came from the smallest voice. Samantha's friend had been standing only a few feet away. Close enough to hear the question. Close enough to see the man's face. Close enough to remember the car. She described the vehicle as pale green. Older. Unremarkable. She described the man's hair. His posture. The way he spoke. Details most adults forget under stress. Details she never did. From her memory, a composite sketch was created. A face built from fragments. Released to the public within hours. It appeared on television. On flyers. In store windows. At intersections. Police began stopping any vehicle that looked even remotely similar. Hundreds of drivers. Thousands of miles. Each stop raised the same question. Was this the one? It never was. While the city searched outward, investigators began moving inward. Into timelines. Into transactions. Into the quiet data people leave behind without noticing. Surveillance footage showed a man withdrawing cash from an ATM. Not far from the area. Not long before the abduction. Gas station cameras captured the same car. At different locations. At different times. A comforting guest log showed a late check-in. A name. A room number. A timestamp that could not be ignored. The route began to form. Point by point. Stop by stop. Not as a straight line. But as a pattern. A movement that connected the place she was taken to the place she was later found. Investigators drove it themselves. The same roads. The same turns. At the same times. The distance matched. The timing aligned. The silence between stops filled itself in. The final layer came from what could not be seen. Tire tracks near the site where she was discovered. Measured. Catalogued. Compared. Inside the vehicle, trace biological material. So minimal it required specialized analysis. So specific it could not belong to anyone else. Under Samantha's fingernails, additional material. Indicative of physical contact. Consistent with resistance. Not emotional evidence. Not narrative. Just probabilities. Ratios. Statistical certainty. Numbers that told the same story every time they were recalculated. Every answer produced another question. Every lead pointed somewhere else. Every piece of certainty created a new uncertainty. The investigation did not feel like discovery. It felt like inevitability. As if the truth had already happened. And the only thing left to do was to prove it had existed at all. The investigation had reached a point where coincidence was no longer enough. The timelines were too precise. The locations are too consistent. The pattern is too clear. Investigators began focusing on one man. Someone who fits the sketch. Someone whose movements aligned. someone whose presence kept reappearing in the margins of the case. His name was Alejandro Avila, not a stranger, not a drifter, not someone passing through. He lived nearby. He knew the roads. He knew the area where the body had been found. He had reasons to be invisible, and just enough familiarity to blend in. To his family he was quiet, private, often withdrawn. To neighbors, unremarkable. The kind of person people remembered only when prompted. But to investigators, his history told a different story. Prior accusations, prior scrutiny, a pattern that had never fully disappeared, only gone dormant. Nothing about him suggested chaos. No criminal theatrics. No obvious instability. What stood out instead was how ordinary he seemed. How easy it was for someone like him to exist unnoticed. To live inside routines. To move through spaces without drawing attention. This was not the profile of someone acting on impulse. It was the profile of someone who understood patience, familiarity, opportunity. Someone who didn't need to search far, because he already knew exactly where to look. The evidence did not arrive all at once. There was no single moment of revelation. No dramatic turning point. It accumulated, layer by layer, detail by detail. A timeline that no longer contradicted itself. A route that no longer left gaps. A series of probabilities that no longer allowed coincidence. What had once been questions became statements. What had once been theories became records. In the courtroom, there was no spectacle. No raised voices. No visible emotion. The jury did not speak. They didn't need to. The verdict was read. Slowly. Methodically. As if the words themselves carried weight. Across the room, Samantha's mother listened in silence. Not searching for relief. Not expecting closure. Only waiting for the inevitable to become official. Outside, the memorial had grown. Flowers placed by strangers. Toys left by children who had never known her. Cards written by hands that didn't know what else to say. There was no sense of victory. No feeling of resolution. Only confirmation. The kind that doesn't change what happened. Only removes the last remaining doubt about who had caused it. The story had already been told itself. The verdict simply caught up. The most disturbing part wasn't how it ended. It was how ordinary it began. No screams. No visible danger. No reason to feel afraid. Just a simple question. About a lost dog. The kind of question people answer without thinking. The kind of moment no one remembers. Until it's the last one that matters. This wasn't just a crime. It was a pattern no one interrupted. A familiar tactic. A familiar silence. A familiar belief that nothing like this could happen here. In the years that followed, Samantha's mother refused to let the story remain unfinished. She transformed grief into purpose, and memory into action. Through the Joyful Child Foundation, her daughter's name became attached to something that still existed in the world. Not as a headline, not as a statistic, but as a warning and a lesson. Amber alerts began to appear across highways. Safety programs reached schools and neighborhoods. Parents learned to notice the moments they used to overlook. Not because they wanted to live in fear, but because they understood how quietly danger can arrive. Samantha's childhood ended in a place that once felt safe. A courtyard. An afternoon. A familiar voice asking for help. And what remains now is not the way she died, but the way her absence continues to change the world around her. Not loudly. Not dramatically, but in the small moments, when someone hesitates, looks twice, or chooses not to answer a stranger's question. If you found this case worth examining, like the video and subscribe to Iman Crime Files. We document real crime cases, disappearances, and unsolved investigations. Until next time, watch closely. The truth is usually left behind.